How does one define life? To be truthful, we aren't really sure. But there are characteristics that all living things share. They are hierarchical order. All life seems to be sensitive and responds to stimuli. All life reproduces. All life grows and develops. All life performs regulatory chemical reactions and undergoes homeostasis. All life uses and processes energy. And finally, all life evolves. So let's go through each one of these. First, all life is hierarchical, meaning that it is ordered by how it's made and how it interacts with other living things. So if we get started, everything that takes up space is made up of atoms. So they don't necessarily have to be living or non-living, but anything that takes up space is made up of atoms. When two or more atoms chemically bond together, we call that a molecule. And like atoms, these are non-living. So water is a non-living molecule. Glucose is also non-living, but it is an important molecule found in living things. When you get certain types of biological molecules together, they can eventually form cells. Now, cells are the most basic structure of a living organism. When you get cells of the same type, we call that a tissue. When tissues join up with other different types of tissues, they can form organs. So in this case, the flowers, leaves, stems are organs. Organ systems develop by the interactions of organs within an organism, and all the organ systems form the organism. So here is a rhododendron plant. Now, this is an individual. When you have a bunch of individuals of the same species, we call that a population. So there's several different rhododendron plants in this area. When you have different species of organisms living in the same area, we call that a community. So not only is there rhododendrons present, but there are Virginia pine trees, there are poison ivy plants, there's many different species of mushroom, bacteria in the soil, the raccoons, black bears, anything that encompasses an Appalachian ecosystem. Finally, and that makes up the ecosystem part. So ecosystems are the communities plus all of the non-living components that we call abiotic. So the things that make up an Appalachian mountain region include elevation, seasonal weather patterns such as temperature and moisture, availability of water, geology. All of these things make up an ecosystem. And the Earth is made up of hundreds of different types of ecosystems. And so the atmospheric layer of Earth that harbors life is known as the biosphere. And for those of you people who think the Earth's flat, here, proof against it. Aha! So let's take a look at the next step. All life responds to their environment. So everything responds to a stimulus, and a stimulus is anything that elicits a response. Here's a couple of videos of living things responding to stimuli imposed upon them.
This is the sensitive plant. I'm going to touch the top and notice how it will begin to fold. And if I do it some more, the entire leaf will fall down. So this is a horseshoe crab that I flipped over to show how it uses its tail to flip itself back over. I may have to help it though.
This third example, your dear old professor is attempting parkour on a beach in Washington State. Right now I'm using my awesome reflexive skills to be able to protect myself as I wipe out. Notice my hands hit the ground first. I do a barrel roll to try to prevent any injury to my head. Thus, I am responding to my environment. All life makes more life. Viruses do this by simply entering into cells and using the cell's machinery to make more viruses. Many microorganisms undergo asexual reproduction, which is simply making genetic copies of itself. Other organisms undergo sexual reproduction, which the advantage of that is making genetic diversity in the offspring, which helps increase the chance of a species' survival. Many organisms provide parental care to increase the chances of a species surviving. So here's a bighorn sheep feeding her young, ensuring that that young will go on and survive to adulthood and make babies his or herself. Many organisms have elaborate structures, displays, and behaviors to help in reproduction. Flowers have petals to help attract insects to help them pollinate. Birds have many different strange courtship behaviors. These are all used to help make more of themselves. All life is made of one or more cells. Some are single-celled organisms like bacteria, protozoans, yeast, and certain types of algae. Some are multicelled organisms like plants, molds, mushrooms, animals, as well as certain algae. All life maintains homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of relatively stable internal environment by self-regulating physiological processes. Perhaps one of the easiest examples is the way in which you cool down when your body temperature increases. Since humans average about 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit in body temperature, any increase or decrease will cause the body to bring the temperature back to its set point physiologically or behaviorally. So, this is an example of a negative feedback mechanism. These are processes that maintain physiological set points. So if you are hot, you're going to respond by sweating, panting, your blood vessels will dilate, and also behaviorally by moving to a cooler place, drinking colder fluids, fanning yourself, wearing thinner clothes, removing certain clothes. And besides temperature regulation, the maintenance of blood glucose, water balance in your body, and blood clotting are all examples. And the way negative feedback works, you start off with your physiological variable, such as it's hot, that's your stimulus. Skin receptors on your skin detect that heat. They send a signal to your brain, which is the integrating center. The brain notices a rise in body temperature, sends messages to your sweat glands, your respiratory system, your blood vessels, to all find ways to put you back down to that normal body temperature. The other type of homeostasis is positive feedback mechanisms. These are processes that enhance physiological responses as the stimulus is present. For example, when you're eating food, you need saliva to coat to help start digestion and lubricate that food through the digestive tract. As you eat more, you make more saliva. The process of making saliva only ends when the stimulus of food ends as well. And besides salivation, the production of adrenaline during emergencies, giving birth to a child, and sweating are all in a continually hot environment are all examples of this. So let's say you're getting ready to eat your favorite food. So the food enters your mouth. The cells that detect that send nerve signal to the brain. The brain then sends a nerve signal to your salivary glands to continue to make more and more saliva. And as long as that food is in your mouth, you're going to continue to salivate and continue to salivate. Once the stimulus, the food in your mouth, is gone, it is then another signal sent to your brain. Brain then says, stop making saliva. Positive feedback. All life acquires and processes energy. While the characteristics of living things provided is not exhaustive, we're going to end with this one. All life needs nutrients and energy to carry out life functions. ATP is the source of energy used in living things to carry out various cellular functions. This requires an outside energy source in order to produce. Producers use sunlight to make carbohydrates like glucose, which in turn will be used to harvest energy needed to make ATP. Consumers retrieve glucose from eating other organisms, which will be used to harvest energy needed to make ATP. Finally, decomposers retrieve glucose by breaking down dead or decaying organisms, which will then be used to harvest energy needed to make ATP. So this is the end of our introduction to biology. Our next chapter is going to be important as we're going to understand how chemistry works in living things.